I will discuss about the definition of risk, concept of risk, application of risk, type of risk. Definition of risk. Risk is an influence affecting strategy caused by an incentive or condition that inhibits transformation to quality excellence. Risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has an effect on at least one objective. The probability of something happening multiplied by the resulting cost or benefit if it does. Concept of risk. Risk is the possibility of losing something of value. Values can be gained or lost when taking risk resulting from a given action or inaction, forcing or unforcing. Risk can also be defined as an intentional interaction with an exception.
Okay, risk measurement is the specialized task of quantifying and communicating risk. Risk measurement is necessary to support the management of risk. So what are the goals of risk measurement? So there are 3 goals. First is uncovering known risks, or also mean that risks that can be identified and understood. Second is making the known risks easy to see and understand and compare. The third one is trying to understand and compare the unknown and anticipated risks. So there are many types of risks of a business can face, such as the strategic risk, compliance risk, operational risk, financial risk, and reputational risk. In order to have a successful risk management strategy, we have to be specific in examining our business and identify things that could go wrong. Besides, we also need some way to estimate how likely they are to happen, and quantifying the impact that they would have and give it to us. In other words, you need a way of measuring risk in your business. Measuring risk in your business is to get a much clearer idea of what your risks are and identify the main areas to look for. You must go over our business and other businesses' activities and point out a series of questions of what is to estimate the likelihood for each risk that has been identified. A simple 5-point scale will be sufficient for most businesses. For example, very unlikely, quite unlikely, medium likelihood, quite likely, very likely. This idea is simply to give a way of ranking for each risk by the likelihood of its happening. For example, if your client has been late paying invoices before, then you should score that risk as a 4 or 5. A natural disaster, on the other hand, would probably score as 1, very unlikely for most businesses. Thirdly, we need to estimate the impact of each risk. How much it will affect our businesses? Would it be inconvenience or a major threat to our survival? As before, we can use a simple 5-point scale. The best way of thinking about impact is in terms of how much money you would lose. Estimate an appropriate range of losses on each risk. Take into account both the direct cost of dealing with the event and the loss of revenue you can expect. For example, we have a retail store that it got flooded. We need to start by estimating the cost of cleaning, repairing the buildings, replacing water damaged stock, buying new display shelves, and many more. But we need to take into account the impact of your store being closed for however long it takes to repair the damage. How much businesses would be lost in that time? The fourth step is by creating a risk scoreboard. This is the summarization of these risks and their relative importance. From this scoreboard, you can see which risks are high and could give a huge impact on businesses' sustainability if it loses. So we can prioritize the most risky things that can give hazard to our businesses. So things that we should look for in measuring risk. First is variance and standard deviation. So variance and standard deviation is the spread of the actual returns around the expected returns. The The greater the deviation of actual returns from expected returns, the greater the variance. Then the second one is the skewness, the biasness toward positive or negative returns. And the third one is kurtosis. So kurtosis is the shape of the tails of the distribution line. So the fatter tails lead to a higher kurtosis.
The objective of risk assessment is to assess hazards, then eliminate them or minimize the level of risk by adding control measures. Risk assessment is important in management to making decisions to avoid any uncertainty occur. Therefore, there are several importances of risk assessment which are improve communication, improve planning, educate employees, cost saving, and identify vulnerabilities. Now, I will explain more details on the importances of risk assessment. The first point is improve planning. How risk assessment help the company improve planning? The company need to have a proper planning to avoid any uncertainty. In order to have a proper planning, the company need to analyze and evaluate the risk. The company need to aware and understand what kind of risk they are exposed to. Therefore, by making risk assessment process, the company will indirectly making a proper planning which will affect the decision of the business. Importance is identify vulnerabilities. Risk assessment will help the company evaluate its external and internal threats. It will help the company identify its weaknesses and inefficiencies. If the weaknesses have been identified, then the company will identify the cause of the weaknesses. Therefore, it benefits the company by creating a list of problems according to its level of risk. Then the company will find a solution to solve those problems. The next importance of risk assessment is improve communication. How risk assessment help the company improve communication? Well, risk assessment involves many people in the company. The employee and employer will interact with each other. Employee and employer will have a meeting to discuss about the risks that might arise from the decision they made. Therefore, the communication between them will improve and they will maintain a good relationship. Okay, the next important of risk assessment is educate employees. It will help increase the employees' awareness of risk. The employee need to have a better knowledge and a better exposure about the business they conduct before making a decision. The employee will use a best practice in their daily operation so that the business can run smoothly. The more knowledge of the employees, the more development to the company. It will help the company's growth. The last importance of risk assessment is cost saving. The company will identify the potential financial risk to avoid risk before making a decision to invest in certain stock. It also helps the company reduce costs of the company such as insurance premium or compensation claim made by others. Therefore, it will help the company reduce the cost as well as the expense if the company make a risk assessment before making decision. Okay, now we will proceed to the risk assessment process. Risk assessment is the process to identify hazard, risk analysis, and risk evaluation. Risk assessment need to do step by step to achieve the best result. Therefore, there are 5 steps in risk assessment process. The first step is identification of hazard. The second step is identify who may be at risk. The third step is evaluate the risk. And the fourth step is record the findings. And the last step is review the assessment.
What are the objectives of risk assessment in a business decision making? First is to identify the areas of possible threats and create contingency of courses action appropriately in order to alleviate risk before an initiative if it becomes a problem. Secondly is to reveal underlying drivers of changes and organize relative effects to help control proactive basic leadership and preparation. And lastly, the objective of risk assessment is to identify the weakest links to monitor and capturing, analyzing, and reporting early stages of incidents before they get out of control by connecting processes, products, suppliers, customers to help companies stay several steps ahead by its competitors. the China-US trade wars. In the recent times, the engagement of China and the United States in a trade war has been one of the major weighty issues as each country continues to discuss tariffs placed on goods traded between them. The three major grounds that prompted the US into initiating the trade war are: first, the US is concerned by China's large trade surplus that may cause depressing job creation in the US. Secondly, they are also concerned that China was utilizing illegal and unfair methods to obtain innovation of US at an effectively discounted price. And thirdly, US is also concerned that China seeks to weaken the US national security and its worldwide standing. Who are affected by this trade war? I would say all of us, in the sense of direct and indirect impacts. A lot of businesses, organizations, and countries will suffer from the trade wars, especially in GDP, manufacturing employment, and so on. The list goes endlessly. Manufacturers in producing countries lose output, profits, and jobs, while ancillary traders and services like shippers, financiers, insurers, and importers lose turnover. Meanwhile, consumers in importing countries face reduced availability of goods and higher prices. Lastly, governments suffer loss of revenue because of reduced trade volumes. In the modern world of globalized production and value chains, the impact of tariffs is much broader because companies have increasingly complex international supply chains to consider. Tariffs can disrupt these supply networks and create additional costs. Tariffs are especially risky with very complex and deeply intertwined global chains, which can jeopardize the whole value proposition for local businesses. Meanwhile, companies that rely on relationships with partners in China, South Korea have to revamp their sourcing and procurement practices. This could affect everything from finance and tax strategies to operational issues like establishing new warehouses and shipping or receiving operations in other locations. From my perspective, I would suggest diversifying risk by minimizing the exposure to the United States as much as possible. This is because policies can change just as quickly as they are enacted. In the interval, companies might consider restructuring their joint ventures as to invest alongside partners deemed neutral.
Cases involving in risk assessment, and one of the examples that we got is with Petronas. Petronas is a short form of Petroleum Nasional Berhad, which is a Malaysian oil and gas company that been founded in 17 August 1974. This company is wholly owned by the government of Malaysia, and fast forward this year, Petronas has been operating in over than 50 countries all around the world. The main risks involved in Petronas is political risk, commodity price risk, health, safety, and environment risk. So the first risk faced by Petronas is political risk. Political risks usually involve with Arab countries such as Iran, Iraq, and Sudan. For example, Sudan has been politically unstable and having a war for 3/4 of their existence due to cultural differences and religion differences. So this war could have been affect the Petronas oil exploration. So how can Petronas handle this risk? Since Petronas is a government-owned company, so the government of Malaysia has strengthened its political ties with Sudan government. Therefore, Sudan government has welcomed Petronas to pursue their explorations in oil and gas in Sudan. In the same time, Petronas used strongest partnerships to minimize this risk, such as China National Oil Corporation. Next is the commodity price risk. The uncertainty of the commodity price risk is quite bothersome for the oil and gas companies such as Petronas, because this could involve losing millions of dollars. So, how Petronas handle this? Petronas has organized the OPEC meeting OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and Petronas is the non-OPEC member. So this pact has made the agreement to adjustment their crude oil production. This means their crude oil production will decrease and to stabilize the price. This pact is actually make the agreement for the first one in the 15 years. Next is health, safety and environment, which known as HSE risk. So the group has leveraged HSE management system to compliance with the HSE regulatory requirement to manage HSE risk. The group has established a governance structure to manage this HSE risk, and the group governance involved in identification of HSE risk, HSE strategic initiative, and establish annual plan and target, compliance with internal review, and also monitoring the implement.
The company that I choose assess the risk well is Gamuda Berhad. Gamuda Berhad is a well-known company in Malaysia, it is based in construction and engineering. Gamuda Berhad was the company that undertaken all the projects such as Klang Valley MRT, Smart Tunnel, which is a joint venture with MMC company. As a construction company, Gamuda exposed to all the risks such as speculative risk, pure risk, financial risk, operational risk, and also the physical hazard on the workplace. Risk, including commodity price risk, interest rate risk, or foreign exchange risk. But for Gamuda Berhad, for the commodity price risk, it is including all the supply of raw material from the supplier. For example, Gamuda is not expertise in manufacturing all the raw material, for example, the cement. The fluctuation of the price of raw material is the risk for Gamuda Berhad. In the operational risk, including the system failure, wrong procedures, fraud, or the criminal activities. For Gamuda, if the worker are not follow the flow of the project or the procedures, this might risky. It is false or not follow the customer demand, so the construction either to abandon or the customer will see. Operational risks include the fraud or the criminal activities. In Gamuda, for examples, their staff might cheating on the contract or corruption. This will affect on the company's reputation. Another risk is the speculative risk. The speculative risk refers to a certain of gain or loss. In order to speculate the value of financial instrument, there are chances either you win or you lose, or you gain or you lose. So Gamuda could consider the risk first before they look on the profits. That might affect Gamuda Berhad is the physical hazard on the workplace. It is focused on workplace, or more specific for Gamuda Berhad on the construction site. Worker might get injured or not comfortable with the workplace. Gamuda assess the risk and find a way to implement. Gamuda provide a good facility to their worker, and then it will produce a quality worker. Gamuda implement those risks by choose to get the fire policy, burglary policy, and also the liability policy to protect their wealth.
Okay, the object. Oh, kejap weh.
Gamuda Berhad. Gini pula. Next as HSE management. Petronas management system.
Chain of
Next one, lastly, for the government owned company. Assess the risk well. Like, business can run smoothly.
Cakap anda start.
1, 2, 3.
Alamak.
Wait. Stop.
Wait. Stop.
The communication. Sekejap.
You dah anggap belum?
Hi. Berhad. What kind of the company? Wait, kenapa aku macam ni?
The company that I choose. Tak tahu. Kejap.
Wait, cakap tu.
Explain more details. Kejap ni. Cakap 1, 2, 3. Tak apa, start ke? Nanti kita drop. Betul lah. Bang,